Questions you should ask yourself before you look into purchasing a sprinter/cargo van. You're invited to join the damn conversation this week at 9 o'clock Eastern. My invited guest will be Steve Rideshare Rodeo Johnson, as I'll be speaking with, Steve Rideshare Rodeo Johnson. In fact, when I asked him to appear, I asked him, are you willing to funk around for about an hour? And he said, funk, yeah. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to funk around and find out this week on I'm Speaking at 9 o'clock Eastern. If this is your first time checking out the Gig Geezer, if you're a returning visitor of the Gig Geezer, thanks for coming by. And if you would not mind, hit that subscribe button. Give my content a thumbs up. Share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. Today is Sunday, March 2nd, 2025. I happen to be in the F-150 today, as you've seen me in a number of videos of lately. But in this particular one, I'm in the F-150 because I'm doing a very small catering opportunity in which I'm supposed to go buy a Krispy Kreme donut and then drop it off at some place nearby the main university's campus. But that's not the point of this segment of the Gig Geezer. The segment of this Gig Geezer is just to get you thinking about if you're looking to enter into this space in which you may be using your sprinter/cargo van for delivery and transport, or for other services, or for that matter, you can ask yourself some of these questions as they apply to any other service-oriented business in which you're providing services to a customer base. The first question that you want to ask yourself, is it the right time? Personally, I did not ask myself, was it the right time to be buying a sprinter/cargo van back in December 2022? Some may say that it was not the right time. And quite honestly, when you ask yourself that question, it's really only one that you can answer. You can obtain as much empirical data as possible that suggests yay or nay, but even after going over the data, sometimes you have to listen to that still small voice that's within you and make the decision of whether it is the right time. As it turned out, the decision that I made may have been contrary to really the trends. The trends that I was looking at was from a gig food app space in which I saw, and this is something that I have articulated on multiple occasions since December 2022, that I saw where earnings on the gig food delivery app had stagnated. And so I needed to put myself in a position where I would have a greater earnings capacity. And that's was really the main justification of my pursuit of a sprinter/cargo van, or then taking things from gig food delivery to going into more so of a delivery and transport space. So then you ask yourself, what is it that you'll do with the van? Now, I talked about this to some extent in a recent Gig Geezer segment, saying where I posed the question, well, what will I do with the van? This is a variation of that question posed, but what will you do with it? In other words, this is more of a personal question. What are you going to do? And so, is it going to be a cash game type operation, or in which you provide a service to a clientele? A service being like tire repair, using your van as the vehicle by which you're conducting the business, but you're offering a tire repair service, or you're offering a mobile barbershop service, or you're offering dog grooming or pet grooming service, or you offering mobile auto repair service. And it could be too that you may be offering landscaping services or some other service that, or pressure washing service, or as I've also used rather affectionately, the example of the people I saw encountered in Charlotte, in which they have a gourmet ice business from that van. But this is something that you're going to have to ask, what are you going to do? You can't just go off of what you're seeing here on the social media platforms, in which you see somebody showing how
how they gloriously earned $500 in a day, and they're taking a victory lap by posting all this on social media. Don't go off of that. You need to ask yourself these hard questions. Another question you're going to ask is, where am I working? Am I working locally, regionally, or over the road? And this is more specific to if you're looking to the purchase of a Sprinter/cargo van. When you're working locally, it means that the biggest benefit is that you're going to be home every night. Another thing that you're likely to do when you're working locally is that you'll be working probably from gig apps, primarily gig food apps, catering apps, last mile apps, but here's the other thing: some of these apps will allow you to work outside of your domicile market. What I mean by domicile market, the market where you live. Some of these apps allow you to work elsewhere or in other states. There's an argument to be made that when you are working locally, you're going to put the least number of miles on your vehicle. But while you may put the least number of miles on your vehicle, there's still maintenance of your vehicle that you've got to keep up with. So don't assume that, you don't assume because you see examples of people talking about how I drove only 60 miles today and I made $250. And you know what? I only have to put money in the tank once a week. Well, that may be true. That may be true. But you also got to consider the type of driving. If it is, and that also is going to be driven by your market. If you're in a large, densely populated metropolitan area, you're going to deal with a lot of traffic, and that's going to be a lot of starting, stopping, and hard accelerations and all. And that is just as rough on a vehicle as anything else. Another thing is that if you're working locally, well, then you have a chance to develop a cash gain. So then the next question, regionally. Now, this is something that I consider doing. Now, working regionally does allow you to still be at home every night. It really does, especially if you define what is your radius of operation. Now, radius of operation is pretty much the number of miles that you will operate primarily away from your domicile market. So, for example, for me, where I'm at, a range of 100 miles. And so there's been a good bit of money that I've made within that 100-mile radius. Now, that's also a question that is asked when you also look into getting commercial insurance. One of the questions they'll ask is the value of the vehicle, but then they'll also ask, what is your radius of operation? And so some default to 500 miles, but some allow you to put in 50 miles or 100 miles, but 100 miles is going to be, because really your premium can be affected by your radius of operation. But the other thing is that if you pursue a US DOT number and or a motor carrier number, an MC number, this is a likely scenario in which you're looking for specific opportunities within a certain mile radius. Now, you may also have to consider deadhead miles, and that may be the number of deadhead miles that you're willing to drive into the pickup location. And so, typically, the most miles that I have to drive is about 115 miles. About 115 miles from the front door of the Geezer compound. So, and that's because in my market, you don't have a lot of shit going out of my market where I live, Columbia, South Carolina. You just don't. You may have things coming to Columbia, and that's not often, but you have to go where the money is. So the question is, how far are you willing to go to where the money is? Now, you may be in a market where it's all there. So then the radius of operation is going to be tighter. I also mentioned, just for what it's, I've already mentioned this already, but it serves to be repeated. When you're working certain gig apps, when you're working regionally, you may be able to turn on the app and find opportunities there. That can help you clean up some of the mess where you may not have gotten, you may have accepted a bad opportunity, but you may be able to clean it up, or you may be on a roll and you're just running up the numbers. Another way of looking at it is that you may be earning money while at that location where you can offset some expenses like gas. So there's a number of ways that you can rationalize that, but the gig apps may come in very handy. In fact, I will say that on one app, I have completed last mile gig delivery opportunities in 7 different states. I want to say 7. Let's see: South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Texas. Yeah, 7 states. Now, the other question is going to be, do you want to go over the road? Now, over the road, at least in my opinion, and this is just my opinion only, is the sexy one. That's the sexy one because you see people driving the road, seeing the country, and they're earning money as they do. Their miles that they drive is their money. That's how you can pretty much calculate how much you're going to earn, because a lot of them go off of the mindset of $1 a mile. So if you drive 1,000 miles, you're looking at $1,000. Again, this is just my opinion and my opinion only. I don't look at 1,000 miles as $1,000. No, I'm not. If over the road was the focal point of my business operations, I may ascribe to that, but I don't. So yes, you're putting in the miles and you're doing over the road. What's missing at this point is that you could be driving for someone, or you may be doing it yourself. Okay, but a lot of folk, when they start off, they may start out gaining experience by driving for a carrier. And so the thing when you drive for a carrier, well, they're going to take their money off the top. I've seen and I've heard of examples of 22% and 30%. These are just some numbers that I have seen and heard. There may be other numbers, but it's hard for me personally to give up 30% off the top. It's hard for me personally to give up 22% off the top. So I hope you see where I'm going with that. But with over the road, when you are doing over the road, I'm about to stop and get some gas here. You're likely to be away from home for days, even weeks at a time. And that's something that you have to be willing to do. You have to say, well, that's the lifestyle that I want to do. It's more of a lifestyle choice. But what is also not talked about with over the road, at least widely not talked about, is the greater likelihood of things going wrong with your vehicle. And so you have to budget for those situations, because it seems as if the farther away you are from home, the more likely shit's gonna happen with your vehicle. Now, some may take this as a knock against them, or at least what I've heard, but you see folk talk about how they step out on faith to go forth in their venture. They talk about how they you go step out on faith, so you're doing something that pleases God, right? You profess how faith without works is dead, and you want to be rewarded by God for your diligence, because if you diligently seek Him, it says how He's a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. And so there is some reward in believing Him, because hey, it talks of these who died in faith, not having seen the promises, but believe from afar. Okay, so there's this eternal thing about maybe possibly being among those who are in the Hall of Fame of faith. But anyway, here's the thing. Let me get a quick example of how the reality of things are out here. And you just can't go on faith money. You gotta have real money. In October 2023, I booked a run from Knoxville, Tennessee, going to Miami. Now, I had no business really booking that because that's going way out of my fucking sphere of it did not make any sense. But I had my queen in mind because it was a run to Miami and there was a chance to make some money. I figured that, okay, I can eat the deadhead miles going to Knoxville, Tennessee, a 4.5 hour drive to Knoxville, and then pick her up on the way back, and then go to Miami and make a little money in the process. Well, truth be said, I did do that on a couple of occasions in 2024. But in October 2023, that shit went awry because I got to about 10 miles from the North Carolina Tennessee border in the range of mountains there, and my right front wheel bearing went bad on me. It was so bad that it could have seized up, and that would have been even worse of a situation. Now, I talked about it on this segment of the Gig Geezer. The fact of the matter is that it cost me $500 cash, not Faith, not credit card, cash, to pay for that being done, because I called up a mobile mechanic. It just so happened, before I left Columbia that morning, I happened to stop off at the ATM and withdrew $800, which I was going to use to put into another account once I got back to Columbia when I picked up my queen. At least that was the way it was planned. So normally I don't carry that type of cash on me. And so you can talk about going about things by faith and all, but reality is that you need to have some cash or some way of some type of leveraging, be it credit cards or personal loans, something to that fact, something that gives you some type of liquidity or leveraging to pay for being out here. Faith ain't gonna do all that. Now, you could believe to put yourself in that position, but I'm just saying again, faith ain't gonna pay for those services, like in that situation. So then the question is, can I afford what I am doing? That's a question that only you can answer, okay? That is a question that only you can answer, because if you come out here, now, as with any business, you may have money saved up, okay? You may be in a position, both money and credit-wise, to withstand the first 6 months to a year. In fact, that is what's recommended, that you be in a position where you can get through your first 6 months to a year in starting up a new business operation. So what do you do then? Can you afford the cost of gas, insurance, maintenance? Can you afford the cost of if you're buying a vehicle? Can you afford to do all that? That leads into my next question about cash flow. What is your cash flow? How is your cash flow? What comprises your cash flow? So then, when I started out, once I got the Sprinter/cargo van and began transitioning into the delivery and transport space, I had the gig apps as what was helping me through the transition, okay? And eventually my stated goal was that I wanted to be less dependent on the gig food delivery apps. And it's gotten to a point where I basically don't do gig food delivery stuff. Yes, I'm on this catering opportunity, but it's on a Sunday, and as I had mentioned in the previous video, this video, which was done yesterday, I had pretty much already earned the money that I was going to earn this week. This is just spare change money now. In case in point, I have completed one DoorDash order this year, $15.75. There was a time a few years back I earned $24,000 in a single year on DoorDash. Okay, so my business model has changed. So what helped me was that the gig food delivery apps helped me help provide the transition. And as I got into the last mile gig delivery apps and then started booking brokered opportunities, that became my primary mode of earnings, which produced then my cash flow. Now, what I'm looking to do now is further diversify that by further adding to my cash game. And the cash game is literally what it is. People keep asking me. It is the opportunities by which you earn cash. Simple as that. And so if I have more cash game opportunities, I'm also creating more cash flow for myself. That's also money that I can put aside. Get where I'm going with this. Now, a couple other things that needs to be said at this point. You know, I've seen a lot of folk talk about how you need to put money back and how they talk at you when they say about, oh, you need to, well, you got a checking account, you got all this stuff, you need to set up a business checking account. Well, I've mentioned about how, yes, you need to set up 2 business checking accounts. But I'm going to tell you in my experience how I set up business checking accounts. The first place that I went to was a credit union where I had a previous financial relationship with them. And so it helped with me starting up. It helped me opening 2 business checking accounts, okay? But then I went to another bank, the bank that I also have had previous business relationships, but that bank asked me to produce proof of business existence, meaning that I need to show, well, do I have business licensing or licensing to show that I am to be conducting business, and the all-important articles of incorporation. And articles of incorporation is something that you do through the state that you reside. It is done typically through the Secretary of your state, the Secretary of State. And so without that, I don't know how else you can open a business checking account, but I know that those were the documents that I had to produce in order for me to set up business checking accounts. All right, so before I move on to my last question that should be asked, I want to clear up something with cash flow. Cash flow is important because you always want to have. I mean, it kind of makes sense. Cash flow, in that you're always looking to have some type of cash stream coming in. Okay. One way of assisting cash flow when you're doing delivery and transport with brokered opportunities is by having a factoring, a company that you deal with for factoring, because there are places that, I mean, without factoring, you may have to wait 30 days before you're paid. Without factoring, it could be 30 days in which you have to wait until you get paid, or you got some other companies that will say that you can get paid within a couple of days, a week, and all that stuff. But the factoring pretty much guarantees, especially when it's non-recourse factoring, it pretty much guarantees that you're going to be paid once you've completed the opportunity, especially if it's a company that has been that is approved by your factoring company. So hopefully I'm making sense of what I'm sharing so far. The fact of the matter is that you're out there on the road and you're waiting 30 days to be paid, but you got gas, you still got gas and other costs. Meanwhile, this is where factoring helps with the cash flow. That's the whole concept behind that. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is a question that you may ask yourself is, do I have the tools? I'm not talking about personally where you have the personality or the skill set. I'm talking about, do you have the tools to make your work easier? Now, when I got the Sprinter/cargo van, well, I had like 10 catering bags at that time, because that was primarily what I was doing. Now I got half as many because I just don't, well, for whatever reason, I only have half as many now. I had tools in terms of for repairs, and I had a hydraulic jack for the van, but those weren't entirely all the tools that I needed to make the work easier. Eventually, I added a dolly, a multi-purpose dolly in which it serves as like a hand truck or a cart. I added E-track system and the ratchet straps to go with it. Along with that, I added furniture blankets, and I added buying knives that are little hand knives that you use to cut through boxes and things like that. So these are things that you may not have starting out, but as you go along with what you're doing, you evolve in your knowledge of what you're doing, and so then you add the tools that are necessary to make your work easier. But at least coming in, you should have an idea what you need, what you should aspire to get. Because if you don't, man, I mean, it kind of looks a little ratty. And people do pay attention to who's doing what. It's not always about how you look. It's not always about how you look. It's about what you do with what you got. It's also how you go about doing your business. That's how people ask you, well, do you have a business card? And so on and so forth. I'll leave you with this one example, and this is a bowling example from many decades ago. There was a guy named Hal Smith. He used to keep score for him. Hal Smith was known as the best dressed person out there on the lanes, at least among the crowd that I'm familiar with. His wife, Sherry, and this is the first time I've even shared this story, or at least, well, I've not shared this story in a long time, but his wife, Sherry, designed his stuff. Hal, if ability was based on how you looked on the lanes, Hal Smith would be the baddest person. He would be the person I should have learned how to bowl from. But Hal Smith was at best a $180 average bowler, and that was on the best of days, on the best of conditions. It's not always so. Don't worry about how you look. Worry about how you go about doing your work. If you go about doing your work a certain way, people will notice. That's just my opinion. So that's all I have to share for this segment of the Gig Geezer. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you like the content that's been provided in this segment or in any other segment, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. I'm Inwood Lane. As always, may your grind and may your hustle continue.